Your job is to sleep with the dogs. An Arab employer asked his African house help to sleep with his dogs. Desperate, exhausted and thirsty, she finally gave in. "Sir, I'm sorry," she whispered, forcing herself to look at him with pleading eyes. "I will never try to leave again. Please, forgive me. I am ready to sleep with the dogs." Find out in this gripping story. Don't forget to subscribe, like and drop a comment below. Amina was only 25 when she left her small village in Nigeria. Her family was poor, and when a recruiter promised her a well-paying job as a housemaid in Saudi Arabia, she saw hope. "You'll earn good money," the recruiter had assured her, flashing a reassuring smile. "You can send it back to your family. They'll never suffer again." At the airport, her mother clung to her tightly, eyes filled with worry. "Be careful, my daughter. The world can be cruel." Amina swallowed her fear and smiled. "I'll make you proud, Mama." With dreams of a better future, she boarded the plane, unaware that she was flying into a nightmare. The moment she landed in Riyadh, her employer was already waiting. Amina had expected a warm welcome, perhaps a kind word. Instead, she was met with a cold stare from a thin, sharp-faced woman wearing a black abaya. "Salam alaikum, madam," Amina greeted politely, bowing her head slightly as she had been taught. The woman barely acknowledged her. She only gestured toward the car, and Amina, feeling a knot tighten in her stomach, obediently followed. The recruiter had painted a beautiful picture: a generous salary, kind employers, and a chance at a better life. But as soon as Amina arrived at her employer's house, the door of freedom slammed shut. Her madam wasted no time. The moment Amina stepped inside, the woman snatched her passport with a cold smile. "For safekeeping," she said. Amina didn't know it yet, but she had just become a prisoner. No phone calls. Amina's stomach twisted. "But my passport?" Amina asked. Her madam's husband, Khalid, a broad-shouldered man with piercing eyes, stepped forward, his voice firm. "You don't need it anymore," he said. "This is your home now." Amina swallowed her fear and nodded. At first, her job seemed manageable: cleaning, cooking, and looking after the children. But soon she realized she was nothing more than a slave. The children treated her worse than a dog, hitting her over the smallest things. If their food wasn't hot enough, they slapped her. If she forgot to bring a toy, they yanked her hair. Even the youngest of them, barely 5 years old, mimicked their mother's cruelty, spitting at her and calling her names. The madam encouraged it. "Teach her discipline," she would say, watching as her children shoved and pinched Amina like a plaything. The only person who showed her kindness was Faisal, the madam's brother. Unlike his sister and her family, he never raised his voice at Amina. Amina cooked every meal in the house, yet she was never given enough to eat. Faisal would slip her leftover food when no one was looking or whisper a quiet "thank you" after she served his meal. He was the only one who seemed to notice that Amina was human. But kindness could not shield her from the true nightmare of the household. The master of the house began to linger too long when she was alone. He would brush against her accidentally, stare when she bent to clean, and call her into his room for no reason. One night, he entered the maid's quarters while she was asleep. Amina woke up to the sound of heavy breathing and the stench of alcohol. "Please, sir," she begged, backing into the corner. He grabbed her wrist. "You're my slave, so keep quiet." Amina kicked and screamed, waking the madam. But instead of helping, the woman slapped her. "Shameless girl. Trying to seduce my husband?" she spat. "You are here to work, not to create problems." The master only laughed. "Let this be a warning. You are powerless here. And if you ever scream again, your lifeless body will be sent back to your country." He smirked. "You think you have a choice?" Every night, she locked her door, praying he wouldn't come in. But he had warned her, "Never lock your room." The threats turned into actions. The first time he forced himself on her, the madam knew. But she didn't care. Amina learned quickly: if she resisted, the beatings followed. It continued every night until he grew tired of her body. Amina was relieved. At least he was no longer coming to her room. When she thought things had settled, Faisal started to notice her bruises. He wasn't like the rest of them. He wasn't blind to her suffering. One evening he whispered, "I'll help you escape." Amina's eyes filled with tears. "Are you serious?" He nodded. "I can't stand seeing what he's doing to you." Hope bloomed in her chest, fragile but alive. But before they could plan anything, Khalid suspected Faisal was trying to help the maid. He stormed into the kitchen and found them speaking in hushed tones. "You fool," he roared, grabbing Faisal by the collar. "You dare interfere in my household because of this African rat?" The next day, Amina was beaten and dragged out of the house. She was sent to another family. Amina arrived at her new workplace feeling cautiously hopeful. The house was large and beautiful, and her bedroom was neat, a luxury she hadn't had before. They even gave her a week to rest before starting work. She soon realized she was the third worker in the household. There was a male worker and another female maid. But the relief was short-lived. Within days, the female worker was transferred to another job. The male worker was set to leave the next morning. Amina would be left alone. The realization made her uneasy. Why was she being isolated? Her illusion of safety shattered the day her new master called her into his room. She obeyed, stepping inside nervously. His wife wasn't around, and the way he studied her made her skin crawl. "Do you know what your job is here?" he asked. "No," she admitted. The man raised an eyebrow, a smirk playing on his lips. "You don't know?" She quickly explained, "I've always done household chores, cleaning, cooking, washing clothes. That's the work I'm used to." Instead of responding, he led her outside, showing her his breeding business. She saw fish, ducks, pigeons, and then he took her to a large structure, almost like a house for humans. Inside were 4 dogs. "So," he said, smirking, "I brought you here to sleep with them." Amina blinked. "Sleep with them?" "Yes," he replied. "Feed them, clean them, take care of them." At first, Amina was relieved. Taking care of dogs didn't seem difficult. She quickly agreed, thinking it was just a simple caretaker role. Little did she know, her nightmare had only begun. But the dogs were acting strangely. One nuzzled against her leg. Another licked her in places that made her uncomfortable. At first, she dismissed it, until one of them tried to climb on top of her. Terrified, she rushed to her master. "Papa, I have a serious problem." "What is it?" he asked. She hesitated before saying, "The dogs, they're acting strangely. One of them licked my body and it scared me." To her horror, he chuckled. "Amina, dogs have feelings too. They have desires just like humans." A cold wave of dread washed over her. "I don't understand." He leaned forward, his face devoid of emotion. "When I said your job was to sleep with the dogs, I didn't mean just caring for them. I meant you will have intimacy with them." Amina felt like the walls were closing in on her. This wasn't a job. This was a prison. She forced herself to stay calm. "Sir, please, how is that possible? I'm not a dog. How can I have intimacy with a dog?" The master told her she had no choice. "Prepare yourself." "Sir, please, give me 2 days to think about it." He studied her before nodding. "Fine." She had just bought herself time. When the 2 days passed, she approached him again, feigning hesitation. I can't do it," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm not feeling well. I'm on my period. Give me 2 weeks to recover." For 2 weeks she stalled. Then one day her master left the house. "Don't open the door for anyone except us when we return." Amina nodded obediently. But the moment he was gone, she grabbed her few belongings and made her way toward the door. Her heart pounded. This was it. Just as she reached for the handle, 2 guards appeared from the shadows. "Where do you think you're going?" one of them sneered. Before she could react, they grabbed her roughly and dragged her back inside. She was locked in a small windowless room for 3 days without food. Desperate, exhausted, and thirsty, she finally gave in. "Sir, I'm sorry," she whispered, forcing herself to look at him with pleading eyes. "I will never try to leave again. Please, forgive me. I am ready to sleep with the dogs." Something in her voice convinced him. He scoffed and led her to the dog's room, watching as she was forced to endure the unimaginable. Her body trembled with pain and humiliation, but she refused to let her spirit break. Limping back to her sleeping quarters, every movement sent searing agony through her battered body. A week passed. The wounds on her skin began to heal, but inside she remained shattered. Yet, from that moment on, Amina played the role of the obedient maid he expected. She spoke softly, kept her head down, and followed orders without hesitation. Slowly she regained their trust, moving carefully, never raising suspicion. One evening she casually engaged the madam in conversation, keeping her tone light and submissive. Later that night, while the household was distracted, she began packing her belongings, one piece at a time, ensuring each move appeared natural. She knew there were cameras watching, so she was cautious, her actions deliberate. By morning, everything was in place. She approached her master as he sipped his tea. "Sir," she said, forcing her voice to be steady, "we are out of cooking supplies." He barely glanced at her. "Do you know where to buy them?" "Yes," she replied. "I can go." Without a second thought, he handed her money, never suspecting what was to come. Amina stepped out of the house, her heart pounding violently against her ribs. This was it. She walked toward the market, but instead of stopping she kept going. She ran. As she hurried through the streets, her heart pounded with every step. Was someone watching her? She glanced over her shoulder, her breath hitching when she thought she saw a familiar figure in the crowd. Panic clawed at her chest. What if they had realized she was gone? What if they caught her before she reached safety? When she finally arrived at the station, another fear crept in. What if the authorities dismissed her story? What if they sent her back? Her hands trembled as she stepped inside, her mind screaming at her to run. But then she remembered the years of suffering, the horror she had endured. She had come too far to turn back now. Swallowing her fear, she took a deep breath and walked straight to the authorities. As Amina poured out her story to the authorities, their faces hardened. They had heard of cases like hers before, girls trafficked, enslaved, broken. But few ever made it out alive, and even fewer had the courage to speak. One officer, a woman with kind but determined eyes, leaned forward. "Do you have any proof? Anything that ties him to this?" Amina hesitated. Then she remembered. "My passport," she whispered. "He kept it locked in his drawer. Top drawer. Right side." The officers exchanged glances. That was all they needed. Within the hour, a raid was underway. The mansion that once loomed over Amina like a prison was now surrounded by armed officers. They stormed inside, catching her master off guard as he lounged in his chair, sipping his evening tea. He barely had time to react before he was yanked to his feet. "What is the meaning of this?" he barked, but his voice carried no power anymore. Amina watched from a distance, her pulse racing as they dragged him out in handcuffs. She expected fear, anger, maybe even regret. But all she felt was relief. Before taking him away, one of the officers turned to Amina. "Go inside and get your things," he instructed. Her hands trembled as she stepped back into the house that had once been her prison. The walls felt smaller, suffocating, but she pushed forward. She grabbed her bag, the same one she had packed in secret, piece by piece, waiting for this moment. As she emerged, the officer gave her a nod of approval before leading her away from the mansion that would never hold her captive again. Later that night, the female officer returned to her, holding something in her hand. Amina's breath caught in her throat as she saw the small, battered passport. "You're free now," the officer said softly. Tears blurred Amina's vision as she took it, clutching it tightly against her chest. Days later, Amina sat on a plane bound for Nigeria. The nightmare was over. As she stepped onto her homeland's soil, she saw her mother waiting for her. Tears streamed down their faces as they embraced. Amina had been broken, beaten, and humiliated. But she had survived. And she would never be a slave again. Kindly support me by subscribing to my channel, liking my video, and dropping a comment. Your support means a lot.